Gefechtsstation!
Greetings, folks. Unilorum here with a World of Warships replay. This is Jimijaz in the Tier 8 German battleship, the Mighty Bismarck. Jimijaz is rocking the Varg camo from the Halloween event, which is always very cool, and he is divisioned with myself in the premium Tier 8 German heavy cruiser, the Prinz Eugen. Though this replay will not include my perspective, since my participation in the battle is not super impressive, and it kind of gets cut short partially due to some friendly torpedoes, but we'll get to that later in the battle. We are in a domination match on two brothers, and we are top tier, which is always really nice as tier 8 ships, since tier 8 does tend to see a lot of up-tiering. As far as ship upgrades and commander skills, this is a pretty traditional secondary build for a German battleship. Highlights for this replay are going to focus on Jimijaz's role as a leader in a battle, which is what a battleship should do. It should help lead the battle. And he's also going to end up taking a lot of damage for the team, and a lot of potential damage, which is, again, a key role of what a battleship player should do. So we have elected to move towards the west flank to help take and defend Alpha. Our team has split up quite evenly here, which is good, so that we're able to contest both caps with reasonably strong strength. In this battle, we don't end up seeing anybody moving down the middle, at least early on, and that's always a threat with two brothers, is that one of the teams will elect to send a significant body of ships down the middle. More often than not, that does not work. Occasionally you do see the replays where a team does move down the middle and is able to successfully execute on that, but more often than not, it's exercise in waste and futility. So we're just going to scope out the opponents here. Right now, we've only spotted one opposing ship, which is the Nagato, that is moving towards Alpha. There will be a couple of opposing destroyers that will move to Alpha, and they will keep us very busy throughout the battle. And in fact, there is one of them, the Icarus, which has just moved into the cap and is dropped smoke to get into concealment, and is now going to get into concealment, get out of the cap. Jimijaz is going to open up here on the opposing Nagato, but there's a couple of problems. First off, he just realized that he had HE loaded and not AP, and the Nagato is going very slowly, so he overshot that ship and didn't land any shells on him. So we can now see a significant portion of the opposing team. At least 5 ships have moved to the Alpha cap, including the Icarus. Like I said, there will be one other destroyer that at some point we will detect here. A couple of the opposing battleships, including this King George, and a couple of cruisers in New Orleans and a Baltimore. And all of these ships are going to keep Jimijaz very busy on this flank. Now, you can see my position on the sea line just west of Jimijaz. I have been trying to get closer in to be able to support our destroyers more effectively, but every time I would open up and get detected, I had at least 2 or 3 ships aiming at me, including a couple of both of the battleships. So I was being fairly cautious in terms of how close I got, so I wouldn't get focused out. Unfortunately, our allied Bayern is really going around the perimeter of the map, and we're going to end up, unfortunately, following him down the one line in order to try to avoid getting sort of pincered or flanked by the King George and the Nagato. So it's not going to be a very good positioning for ourselves on the one line, but at the same time, we don't want to get into a crossfire situation, and I want to try, myself and the Prinz Eugen, I'm trying to get closer to support the destroyers better. Now, speaking of getting closer and supporting the destroyers better, this is exactly what Jimijaz is doing. So as a battleship, German battleships in particular are sort of the frontline battleships. They're very tanky and are designed to be in close quarters. So Jimijaz is actually moving into the cap to try to push off some of these opposing ships. It's going to pop hydro here because we do know that the opposing Icarus is still in the cap, since the Alpha cap is being contested. And you can see here the Nagato is full broadside, but he's going very slowly. But I think in this salvo, Jimijaz does get a Citadel. Yes, he does. Thanks to the hydroacoustic search, Jimijaz detected the torpedoes sent by the Icarus, and he's going to be able to avoid all of them. Now, there is an Allied Mahan here and an Allied T-61, and both of these destroyers are going to be playing parallel or behind the capital ships on our team, and that's going to result in some frustrating gameplay, including situations like this where this T-61, that is not the first time or the only time that he's going to end up sending torpedoes basically directly in front of Jimijaz and sort of startling him. Is sort of very close quarters to be sending those torpedoes. And unfortunately, that, like I said, that's not going to be the first time that Allied destroyer is going to be doing that. And then also the Allied Mahan is, again, he's kind of playing within and behind us capital ships, and that again is going to end up being a risk not only for Jimijaz but for myself later in the battle. As I mentioned earlier, I do end up taking some Allied torpedoes due to positioning of our Allied destroyers and how they send torpedoes. So Jimijaz at this point has successfully pushed away the opposing team, even though we haven't sunk too much on this side. In fact, I don't know that we've sunk any ships on the Alpha side, but he's played the role of basically the bruiser and the bouncer, and basically pushed away the opposing team. But he's taken a substantial amount of damage. He's tanked almost 1.5 million so far. So now he needs to retreat, recover some health, and then re-engage once he's got some of his health back. While he's doing that, he's going to fire on the Edinburgh and some of these other cruisers. Now that the cruisers, including the New Orleans, the Edinburgh, and the Baltimore, are really doing a lot of the damage here to Jimijaz, and so he's trying to get out of their reach as best he can, so that again he can try to get in a couple more heals before he re-engages. You can see there's a body of ships, allies, again on the one line, including myself, which I normally don't like. I was really anxious about being able to push back more into the middle. And it's going to be right about this time. You'll see that there were some torpedoes, Allied torpedoes, sent by the Mahan that were on the right-hand side of the screen a few moments ago. And those are the torpedoes that I'm going to end up, unfortunately, running into. I'm at a position trying to get turned back in toward Alpha so I can help support the cap better, because the opposing King George is actually focusing other ships, and but I'm going to end up taking, I think, at least one or maybe two of the Allied torpedoes. And for some reason, even though I take those Allied torpedoes, the Allied Mahan does not receive any sort of disciplinary effects in the match, nor is there any indication that he did hit an ally in the chat screen where you normally see the pink text. But I went back and watched my own replay on this, and I definitely did end up taking friendly torpedoes, and so I'm not sure whether that was just a bug or whether the Allied Mahan has some sort of special dispensation with wargaming to not go pink. I don't know. So in any case, my role in this match is going to end up getting cut a little bit short. We, as far as the situation in the game, we're actually down by 2 ships. We're even on the cap holds, but the situation is that we are currently behind. Jimijaz is getting in another heal here, and then he's going to turn back in and again push in to try to stave off some of these opposing ships that are trying to contest Alpha. The opposing King George that was over on the one line has finally gone down. You can see myself in the Prince Eugen at Hotel 2 or Golf 2, and at this point I had already taken the torpedoes, and so I was on much less health than I ideally would have been, and I end up getting focused out by the opposing team here in just a few moments, and won't be able to contribute further in the battle. And there I go. Unfortunately, like I said, my participation in the battle wasn't particularly strong. I do end up still being, I think, third or fourth in the team for XP, but it was kind of a frustrating event for that to happen. So Jimijaz is again pushing back into Alpha. He's trying to put pressure on the New Orleans and some of these other ships that are hanging around Alpha. Our positioning on the 1 and 2 line is not very effective, although we are keeping the opposing team out of Alpha, which is good. And we've now taken down another opposing ship. So we are behind by 1 ship at this point and only modestly behind in points. Okay, I'm not sure why the New Orleans here has elected to push out, unless he anticipated torpedoes coming from the T-61, which I'm not sure he's able to detect. But he's made a choice here to try to charge Jimijaz and the Bismarck. And Jimijaz is able to push through the bow of the New Orleans and take him down. So we're now even on ships. And Jimijaz is going to push back down south here to help put pressure on these other ships. So here again, you're seeing torpedoes being sent by the T-61 in front of Jimijaz. In fact, there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be some other occasions where he's going to be sending very close to Jimijaz. Now taking a ship lead, thanks to, and Jimijaz gets a nice citadel and takes out the engine of the Edinburgh. Jimijaz wants to change his attention to the opposing Baltimore because he's a threat to the destroyers, but also our allied Bayern is putting himself in a crossfire. Jimijaz is trying to get some pressure on these cruisers that are threatening the Bayern. Okay, again, here's a spread of torpedoes being sent directly in front of Jimijaz by the T-61. This Baltimore that is on Jimijaz's port side, this opposing Baltimore, he actually does a very impressive job without hydro dodging the multitude of torpedo spreads that are sent at him. But you'll see some comments in chat here a little later on about him saying that torpedo beats for the win in public chat. We do lose the Allied Bayern, which was the other battleship on this flank. We continue to hold Alpha, but we are we're actually behind in points because we're behind by 1 ship. This Baltimore's doing the right thing by staying bow on. Jimijaz cannot overmatch his bow. But even if he would be able to, classic German dispersion prevented that last salvo from even striking the Baltimore. Here again, the T-61 is sending a torpedo spread very close to Jimijaz that he could have just as well turned into, but fortunately he did not. Jimijaz at this point is out of repair parties. He has held his damage control with regard to the fire and is just going to let it burn out. Doesn't want to be in a situation where he ends up getting a second fire. And finally, the Allied Mahan is able to get a couple torpedoes on the Baltimore and take him out of the battle. So we are currently behind, again, by 1 ship. We're even, again, on the caps. Jimijaz is going to set secondaries on the opposing Icarus and then turn his main battery to the Edinburgh. Here, again, I think he lands the Citadel and is able to finish off the cruiser. So now, even on the ships, we are slightly behind in points because the opposing team, I believe they've held caps slightly longer than we have. They still have both of the opposing destroyers that were on the Alpha side are still at Alpha, including the Icarus. And here you can see in chat, Jimijaz has typed into chat, your turn DDs. Here he's expressing some frustration because the Allied DDs have been playing a little far back and not providing a lot of screening. And so Jimijaz, with no more repair parties left, needs to be a little farther from play so that he doesn't get focused out by the opposing team or runs the risk of taking torpedoes, because he would not be able to survive a torpedo strike at this point. The Allied T-61 here is engaging the opposing Icarus and is going to be able to get him down here in just a moment. So finally, one of the two opposing destroyers that is on the Alpha side has been eliminated. We did, through active attrition, get the opposing east flank down and have now taken Delta. We can now see that an opposing Bismarck has moved up the middle to contest Bravo. And so Jimijaz is going to go in to intercept and engage that Bismarck. We don't know how many repair parties the opposing Bismarck has, but he's very low on health at this point, so presumably he may not have any repair parties available to him either. And Jimijaz is going to leave it to the two Allied destroyers to keep Alpha defended. We're actually very close to winning at this point. We have a one-ship advantage. We hold 2 caps. And so our lead is about 100 points at this time. Jimijaz is up to almost 2.5 million in tanked damage for the team, which is always a good thing. Not the highest number that a battleship player has ever seen, but certainly at this tier and for this role, it's very good. There's the high caliber achievement for Jimijaz. Some torpedoes from the Allied T-61 are closing in on the opposing Bismarck. Salvo out, but I think he's going to hit the guns and not do the damage, but it doesn't matter. The opposing Bismarck takes torpedoes and we end up winning on points. So a very well played match by Jimijaz. Again, he played a very good, represented the battleship play very well, tanked a lot of damage for the team, pushed in when necessary, acted as the bully as he would, and sort of provide area denial. So a very well played match by Jimijaz. And like I said, unfortunately, my participation in the Prince Eugen was cut a little bit short, but a good match nonetheless. So I hope you enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.